Initially, when we create an object in JavaScript, it's just empty. It doesn't have any of its own properties. And then we can add properties to it like this. So in this example, I have what started off as an empty object, and then we populated it with one property called name and a value of Chris. So unlike programming languages like C++ or Java or C#, we don't have any classes. Objects are all the same in JavaScript. You can think of them as just empty tables of properties. On the left, I've created an object and assigned it to the variable person. And you can see this object has a bunch of properties and values that were initialized when we created the object using object literal syntax. And here's the table that represents this new object. So the way you can think about this is that when we created this object, it started off as empty, and so this table was just empty with no properties or values. And then in one single step, we added a bunch of properties and their values. And so this is called constructing the object. Or in other words, setting its initial properties or its initial state. And so just to get the vocabulary straight, the first thing that we'll do is create an object. And so I've showed you a few ways to do that. And then the second thing we'll do is to construct it or add its initial properties. Okay, so far we've constructed this object by just using object literal syntax. Let me show you another way we construct this object using a function. So I'll create a function here called construct person. And this will take as a parameter some object. And then we can start assigning properties to the object. I'm just going to duplicate the properties that I have below. And so we'll assign the year and the name and the toString function. And then what we'll do is we'll create the new object like this. And then we'll construct the object by calling the construct person function and passing the new empty object that was created. Once I hit save and reload the code in the JavaScript console, I can type person and see that its properties have been set. Normally, you don't see people creating and constructing objects this way. But I'm doing it so that you can get a better idea of what's actually happening under the hood. Specifically, that we normally start off with an empty object like this, and then assign properties to that object, either in a function or directly on the object itself. In this case, we're passing this empty object in as a parameter to this function, and the function is doing the work of assigning the initial properties. But we can combine these two steps. Instead, we can use the new keyword in combination with a function. We can use any function. In this case, we'll use the construct person function. So instead of doing the 2 lines on 9 and 10, I'll say the person is equal to a new construct person. Now this time I'm not going to pass in any empty object because by using the new keyword, JavaScript will automatically create this empty object for me. So let me get rid of these 2 lines. Now we need to change the constructor or the construct person function a little bit. Since we're not passing in a parameter anymore, we need some way of accessing the newly created object. And the way we can do that is by using the this keyword. So this will point to something like a new empty object that looks like this. When I save that code and reload it in the debugger, I can type person. And notice a few things here. One is that we get an object, and our object is populated with all the same properties, and also that the debugger has named this object for us after its function that was used to construct it. So this function here has a special name. It's called a constructor function. And that's because it's used to construct objects. Now we can use any function as a constructor function, and so what makes it a constructor function is when we use this new keyword. And what this does is actually two steps. First, it creates this empty object for us that initially all look the same, and then it calls our function and gives the function a chance to populate the object with some properties by using the this keyword. Now, since a constructor function can be any function, typically by convention, we use a capital letter to denote that the function is a constructor function. So to clean this up a little bit, what I would do is instead of saying construct person, I would just create a function called person with a capital P. And then we would say person is equal to new person with a capital P. And just to make sure that this is still working, if I go back in the browser, we should still get an object now. But notice that its name has been renamed after this new constructor function called person. But we still have these three properties. In this video, we looked at how we can use a function to construct an object by setting its initial property values. Then we looked at how to use the new keyword in combination with a function to first create an empty object, and then second, to populate that empty object with properties, or to construct it. We looked at how constructor functions typically are denoted with a capital letter so that the users of the function know that it's supposed to be used like this. You'll see constructor functions used all over frameworks like Meteor, and they're used to construct objects in a similar way over and over again.